Hi Year 11s, this is a video on the presentation of data. So a frequency table is an easy way to view and organize data. A bar chart we use for discrete data, that means there's gaps between the bars, and a histogram is used for continuous data, there are no gaps. So if we see from these two graphs here, a bar chart has the spaces in between, and a histogram, it's all joined together. We can also describe the shape of a histogram using these three things. So with the first graph here, you'll see we call it negatively skewed, and that's because most of the data is grouped towards the right hand side. The middle graph we say is symmetrical, or it has a normal distribution because it is symmetrical around the middle, and the third graph we call positively skewed because all the data is grouped towards the left hand side. So we have two examples that we are going to be doing. So this is the first one, example 1. In the opening problem, ignore that part, not relevant, you studied the marks of 32 students who took a test with a maximum mark of 10. Their scores are listed below. There are the scores, not going to read them out, there's a few too many. And we're going to construct a frequency table for this data and then draw a bar chart. When we draw a frequency table, for this lot of data there's going to be two columns. So the first column is going to be score, and the second column will just be F for frequency. Now with this we just look at all our scores and we just write down every single possible score we've got. So if we look here, we go from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way up to 10. So we need to write those out. Now the F for frequency, that is how many of that number do we have. So how many zeros do we have? There is 1 0. How many ones is there in the data? There are 2. How many 2s? How many 3s? There are 2 3s, and so on. And when we fill in the table, we will end up with something that looks like that. And that is a frequency table. And so if you want, we can draw our lines to separate the columns. And from this then we need to draw a bar chart. So we use a bar chart because it's discrete data. So with this we can't have a score of say 2.5. We can only have whole number scores, which means it is discrete. I'm not going to draw a bar chart in this. It is now just going to magically appear so you can see what it looks like. And there's our bar chart, and I've also changed the frequency table to one that looks a bit prettier than the one that I just drew before. So you can see from here how each bar is separate, there's gaps between them all because it is discrete data. They've coloured them all different colours, you don't need to do that, you just need to make sure the bars are the same width and they have the same amount of space between each of the bars. Okay, next example. So we have a group of 37 teachers who were asked how much time in minutes they spent eating lunch at school. We have the data there. We're going to construct a frequency table for this data with classes 0 to 4, 4 to 8, etc. And then we're going to do a histogram. So when we group data, if you're not told how to group it, you make that decision for yourself. But here we are told to do 0 to 4, 4 to 8. Then obviously we'll do 8 to 12, and it's going up in 4s each time. So once again with this we need to make a nice lovely table, and our first column is going to be time because that's what data collected was on, and we are once again going to have a frequency column for our second column. Now if we look here, our biggest value is 16 in the data, so we need to make sure our groups go up to at least 16. So with our time we're going to go from 0 t to 4. Now when we do this, you've got to make sure your less than or equal to matches properly. So here we've got from, because there's no 0 in the data, we're going there's t is greater than 0 or greater than equal to 4, which means our second row is going to be where t has to be greater than 4 or greater than equal to 8. So that means if we have a value of 4, it needs to go into the first grouping because that's the one that includes 4. The second one, it just has to be greater than 4. And we carry on like that, so then we're going to have 8, t has to be greater than 8 or less than and equal to 12, and the last one, 12, t has to be greater than 12 or less than or equal to 16. 16 is our biggest number, so we don't need to add any more rows to the table. Then we just look at the frequency for each, so we just need to count up how many are between 0 and 4. And if you add them up, that would be 8. How many are between 4 and 8? Remember, not including 4. That would be 12. From 8 to 12 there's 10, and from 12 to 16 there are 7. Now with this we are going to construct a histogram, first because it tells us to do that, but also time is a continuous variable. So even though there's no decimal places in our data here, it is possible to have 5.5 hours, 5.5 minutes. It is possible to have all those values in between, so it is continuous. Once again, our graph is going to magically appear in a second, which will be the histogram, and then you can see how it is drawn. And there we have our histogram and our table, all a bit nicer than what I would be able to draw it right now. Hope that all makes sense. With that information, you can now do 6b from your textbook. If you have any questions or you need clarification on anything, just send me an email.